Hello and welcome to another episode of Riff Roadie. I'm your host, Derrin Burke. Before we get started, I'd like to say thank you to my wonderful friend, Melina Nolte, for setting this interview up. So thank you, Melina, so much. Our special guest today is a two-time Grammy-nominated actor, singer, songwriter, on-air talent, and host. You may have seen him in movies or TV shows such as Runaway Romance, The Ultimate Legacy, Gilmore Girls, Oprah, The Bold and the Beautiful, and The Singing Bee. He's also the recipient of the 10 Outstanding Young Americans Award. He's been featured in Country Weekly magazine and performed his songs on The Today Show, Fox and Friends, Fox's The Strategy Room, Entertainment Tonight, and now he's here with us. Bo Davidson, thank you for joining us today, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Derrin. Thank you for having me. You did a great job on the research there. I just have to correct you with one thing. You said Grammy nominee, and I want to make it very clear. I have not yet been nominated for a Grammy. These are Emmy Awards that are regional into the Mid-South. So I just don't want to be falsely claiming something that isn't true, because you know how that comes back to bite you in the butt sometimes.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks for joining us. And 2020, what a year. And I'll be honest, it took me quite some time to understand where the blessings were for me in this past year. And I'd like to talk about your song Blessed here in a second. But what a perfect time for the anointed, which is all of us, to stand up and take their rightful place in the body of Christ. My question here is, what have you learned from this past year in a year such as 2020?
Oh, gosh. I've learned a lot. 2020 started out miserably for so many people. Well, actually, I should rephrase that. Maybe it started out with a lot of promise and hope before the virus came through. We're talking about February, March when it really happened. So maybe like a lot of people, they wanted to close their chapter on 2019 and thought, oh, another year, just like we're going through right now. And then the virus hits and so many things crumble and fall apart. I had high hopes for 2020 because part of my 2019 was rough. So I thought, okay, let's turn this chapter, just like a lot of people do. And then so many things happened in 2020 that were both profoundly impactful upon me in terms of loss, but also in terms of grace. Sometimes you have to see these retrospectively in order to understand them. But now that I've had a moment or two for reflection upon them, I can't say that as bad as 2020 was, that I didn't feel anointing, that I didn't feel blessing, that I didn't feel grace, because I did. But you have to have your eyes open enough to see it. You can't be someone who has a dismal outlook on everything. I can't remember who said it, but I believe that there was something that was once said that you can look at every opportunity as a chance to feel sorry for yourself or as an opportunity to grow, and you get to choose. You have that choice. You have that power. And thankfully, after completing Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, it gave me a lot of really great perspective on everything that happened to me. And I know that we'll probably delve into some of that, but just broad strokes, 2020 was very hard. I experienced a lot of loss, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, but life is suffering. There's no other way to say it. We are part of a fallen group of people. We're part of fallen humanity. And we've got to do our own individual parts to rise to a new level, to find ways to be better individually, which then makes collectively us better as a people, both as Americans and in terms of just human beings. I like to keep personally, Derrin, everything at the individual level, because there's so much choice we have individually to change ourselves, which can have broader impact. But so many people say, go out there and change the world, change the world. You got to start with yourself.
Agreed. Absolutely. And I'd like to pick your brain on the topic of dedication here for a second, if I may. I don't think anyone achieves the level of success that you have. No one wins the 10 Outstanding Americans Award. No one wins all these awards that you won as a singer, actor, songwriter, and an on-air talent without some degree of dedication. And can you share with us your thoughts on what it takes to develop a strong work ethic?
Absolutely. Consistency is one of my biggest things. I think that's what I've applied. I read a great book, and I'm trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it has to do with the habits that you build daily that make you successful. So basically, the point of the book, it's called The Slight Edge. Jeff Olson, highly recommend it. What he says is the reason why 19 out of 20 people are unsuccessful is because they are unwilling to do the things that the 1 out of 20 is willing to do on a daily basis. It's habituated effort. And he describes success, which I thought was one of the best definitions I've ever heard of it, as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. We think of success totally monetarily. totally in terms of fame. People come up and ask me, Bo, why aren't you more famous than you are? Why haven't I heard of you? Well, I don't have an explanation for that. But if fame is my goal, then I'm dead. I'm dead in the water. It's not good. But that's not what I'm after. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, or sometimes ideals, plural. So for me, what I put into practice it was almost like a Peyton Manning kind of thing. I'll make a sports reference because I love Peyton. Peyton knew he wasn't the most talented person out there on the field. He knew he didn't have the best arm. He knew he could outwork you, though. And he knew pre-snap. He knew the studying that he would do in the process of the next game would make him a better quarterback. I remember when a reporter asked him, Peyton, you throw a lot of, it seems like you're throwing a lot of wobbly passes. And he said, yeah, I throw a lot of wobbly touchdowns too. It's just a great way of saying it. I loved that. But he knew he could outwork you. So for me, I thought, okay, talent is so subjective in my business. It's a reality that you just have to face. It's not a meritocracy. It's just not. You can be the greatest actor in the world and we'll never hear from you. You can be the greatest journalist in the world and we'll never hear from you. It's not like football or sports sometimes where the fastest, best, most gifted athlete makes it to the top. Not everybody can be Stephon Diggs, but in my business, it's very subjective. So what I thought is I'm going to have to use my brain and my sense of marketing and my work ethic to succeed. And that's what's paid off for me. So when you ask me this question, as I look back, the dedication is about doing things on a daily basis that I've done for years now. And I didn't realize this until much later, that put me in the position to be better off, to be more fortunate, to be, it's luck. And remember they say, it's preparation where preparation meets opportunity. I wanted to do all the preparation and wait for the opportunity. Sometimes the timing was off. Sometimes the opportunity was off, but I wanted to be prepared. So as I look back at some of the success that I've had, whatever marginal amount there's been, I think it's the result of dedication that I've had on a daily basis. Even today, before we are doing this podcast right now, I've spent hours in research. I've spent hours reaching out to people who I have had that are colleagues in the past, some of whom have hired me and worked with me before. Some of them I don't know. And I figure we're at the top of a new year, there's a good chance they've forgotten about me. They might not. I mean, it's not their priority to know who Bo Davidson is, but it is my priority to let them know who Bo Davidson is. So that's the kind of practice I've put into play on a daily basis. And I think that habituation, if you can do that on a daily basis and outwork someone else, because guess what? While you're doing this, someone else isn't doing that. And what do they say? Must be present to win. You got to show up.
Yes, sir. I'm a true believer in hard work. I like your stance on that.
Good.
So your song Blessed, you've performed this song many times in many different places. On the TV show Home and Family, you've sung the song for our troops at Purple Heart ceremonies. And recently you performed this song that I think has a very powerful message with some members of the Army Band virtually in this past year during the anniversary of 9/11. And what was that process like? And what were the challenges that you battled through in order to get such a beautiful end product?
Well, it was tough, Derrin, actually, in a lot of ways, because like most songs, they come from the spark of an idea, from spark of inspiration. Songs to us are children, to songwriters. They go through a birth process, sometimes a painful birth process. And it was 2012. You may remember the time. People sometimes have very short memories, but I was concerned that a lot of people in my age group and in my generation had become complacent, had become spoiled. I'm one of them. We all are one of them. And I worried that we were not reflecting on what came before us. The tremendous amount of sacrifice that created this nation. Yes, we are imperfect. Yes, we have flaws. We see them right now, but it's not like we haven't seen these before, so I thought I've got to write a song that talks about the blessings of our nation. And it started out with a couple of very basic questions. What's courage? What's honor? What are these topics? You're a military man. You know these concepts all too well. But my thought was, is it just reserved to the military? Or do courage and honor have to only be reserved to the military? No, they can be reserved for everyday people. But you've got to know what courage and honor and glory and duty are. These are tenets that everyone should aspire to. So I started out the song from that premise. What's courage? What's honor? Are these words or just ideals long forgotten? Are these just written down in an old story that got passed down to us? Do we have to hear about, oh, your grandfather, he was a courageous man. Why can't I be courageous? Why can't I be like him? So that's where the song was spawned from. And then I created the music video for it. And I performed it a couple times, and I saw the resonance it had with a lot of people. And the hardest part, honestly, Derrin, was getting the music video done, because I started out with wanting to do this in a military setting, meaning I'd like to have some veterans in it. I'd like to have some active duty. I'd like to have some airplanes, something that would make it visually interesting. So I was in Nashville at the time, and I called up the Tennessee Air National Guard, and they're right next to the airport. And they said, well, it's going to be tough. We've got to go through all this level of clearance to do it, but we'll try. And I think it was maybe January, February when I reached out to them. It wasn't until April I finally got the final clearance, because not only did it have to be cleared with the Air National Guard, it had to be cleared with the Pentagon and Department of Defense. It had to go that high, so you don't show tail numbers in planes, you don't show an officer's last name on their uniform, and also because the C-130 took off in the background at the end of the video, that's on the FAA side, so I had to get FAA clearance. So to answer your question, there were a lot of impediments and hurdles, but I was optimistic the entire time. If God's going to bless you to do it, you're going to do it. There's going to find a way. And luckily it did. I shouldn't even say luck. It was a blessing that I got to do it, and that it has reached and touched so many people. So there were challenges, but when you go from idea to song to video to releasing it worldwide, we have great methods of distribution right now of people being able to find your materials. And then on, shows like The Bold and the Beautiful or Fox, or I'd say maybe even most impactfully, what I just did with the Army band, U.S. Army band, Pershing Zone. They came to me and said, we've seen your song. We want to do it. We want to do a virtual concert because we can't perform right now. I thought, what a blessing. They came and found me. I didn't know they knew who I was. I had no idea. And we've done it with 2 songs now, not just with that one, but another one called Heart of Purple and Gold, which I wrote about the Purple Heart, the meaning of it, the history of it, the significance of it. And that happened twice this year. So can I look back in 2020 and say it was all for naught? No, I can't. These are 2 things that were monumental victories for me, and I'm not talking about financially here. I'm talking about just in terms of putting my heart out there and letting people see where that goes and see if it resonates with them. So yes, there were challenges. Yes, there were obstacles, but it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And as some people may know, I'm a big fan of covers. And what I primarily love is when someone is able to take a song, infuse their sound into it, and redeliver a lyric with their stamp on it. And I think you've done this wonderfully in your cover of Jeff Buckley's Hallelujah. And truth be told, I did tear up a little bit the first time I saw the music video. But the way that you're able to sing the song with such power, emotion, conviction, and just raw vulnerability is just amazing. And I'm curious, what kind of a headspace were you in when you were singing this cover?
Well, first of all, thank you. That means a lot to me. Anytime anyone from any walk of life tells me they've been affected or that I've emotionally affected them with my performance or composition or performance, it will never get old. That's why we do it. That's why we do it. With Hallelujah, I'm trying to think at the headspace I was in at the time. Here's the issue with covers, since you're a fan of them. When anyone takes a stab at a cover, you have to be ready for the comparisons you're going to get and that you're going to draw. And in my opinion, a cover is not worth covering unless you have a very unique and profound interpretation of the song. In other words, you shouldn't just be singing it to sing it. This is not karaoke, to be quite honest with you. That's not what we're doing here. And it's not what I wanted to do. And you have Jeff Buckley, you have the original Leonard Cohen version. You have Rufus Wainwright did a version, I believe, and you have Jeff Buckley. Jeff Buckley, unfortunately, sadly lost his life here in Memphis, Tennessee, where I am. He drowned, and most of his work has become posthumous. It's become posthumously successful. So with Hallelujah, I wanted to think about each verse, and there are about 5 or 6, I believe. And some of them are just very profound. And so I sat down with the lyrics and I thought, how can I deliver this? One thing an acting teacher taught me at Northwestern years ago, when I would perform, I would be very presentational in my style. It's how I was taught to perform. She said, Bo, just got to tell you something. This is not about you. It's not about you. It's about the material you're performing and the character you're playing. And that had a profound meaning to me, because I thought, when you're delivering someone else's song, it is not your creation. You don't really get to decide all the parameters of. You can't get cute and start changing lyrics around. This is someone else's work. The same way we perform Bach and Beethoven now, you are paying homage to Bach and Beethoven hundreds of years ago.
Mhm.
So my take on it was, how can I deliver this differently? And if you listen very closely to the way Jeff Buckley sings the song, you hear breaths. You hear this tenderness, this very rich vulnerability. And I wanted to put that in the song. But I also wanted to deliver just a different interpretation. And it's my own, I guess. You're putting your own inflection upon someone else's material. So my headspace was deliver it honestly, with integrity, with respect to its creator, its writer, and also respect to those who have sung it before you.
Mhm.
That's important too. I hear covers nowadays sometimes that I'm thinking, I don't even know why you covered that song. You did nothing different with it. And it just becomes a dud. Whereas you listen to other songs that have taken, as an example, Chris Cornell, the late Chris Cornell, who covered Billie Jean. I loved Michael Jackson. I loved his version of it, but Chris Cornell slowed it way down. And I started listening to this song. I remember, I think it was used in a spin class in Los Angeles. They were using it to cool down. And I heard this rock voice come out, and he goes, she was more like a beauty queen. And it was slowed down. I thought, whoa, she says that but the kid is not my son. I was like, these lyrics are hitting me in a way I'd never heard them before. That's the kind of interpretation you want. You don't want to just copy what someone else did. So whenever I cover a song, that's my approach, is take the material, make it your own, but be honest and be respectful of those who created it.
Yes, sir. Love Chris Cornell. But I do have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Do you picture anyone or anything, just when you're singing in general?
It depends on, I suppose, what the material is. In the case, I close my eyes a lot of time when I sing, especially when I'm recording. When you're performing, you don't want to do that, because even though people say you're getting lost in the music, I feel like you're sometimes losing a connection with your audience. I'm not going to necessarily say I picture these people, but I tap into what they are tapping into, which is people like Elvis Presley, Billy Joel, Elton John, James Taylor. These are people who've thought quite a bit about their talent and what they're presenting. So I think of phrasing, Frank Sinatra, for instance. If you listen to Sin and the Clowns by Frank Sinatra, his phrasing is off the chart. It sounds so effortless to him, but the way he's delivering the material
Mhm.
is profound. So I don't necessarily picture anything or anyone unless it is designed to influence my performance. If you're performing something deeply sad, then you need to probably be thinking of something deeply sad that's happened to you in your life. Unfortunately, I have a lot of that lately. But it's again about honesty and integrity. That's what I would say. Is it just depends on the material that I'm presenting. That's what I owe myself. It's what I owe my audience, and it's what I owe the composer if it's a cover.
Okay. You mentioned being inspired by Elvis Presley, another native of your shared hometown of
Yeah.
Memphis, Tennessee. Is there anybody else that inspires you as a singer, songwriter, or musician?
Well, the aforementioned Billy Joel, Elton John, and James Taylor for sure. And I'll add another one in there, and that's Garth Brooks. Garth just did a recent special, Christmas special, and it was pretty much just him, very raw, him and Trisha just singing Christmas songs. He's one of the first people I saw perform here in Memphis when I was a young kid. Billy and Elton and Rod Stewart. I saw all of them very, very early on. And, they're all singer-songwriters. So it's not just that they're performers, they are also songwriters. Garth was the one who taught me, and Elvis to a degree, how the relationship with the audience, the reaching out and looking at individual people and making a special connection happen. That to me is so exciting. And I just recently, Derrin, I was going back and reviewing tapes of me performing as a kid. I just saw myself performing a Billy Joel medley, an Elvis medley, all the a Neil Sedaka medley, all these old things. And I was just performing at the time. I was being taught how to sing and how to be a showman and how to move and hold my microphone. I didn't have a concept really at that time, although it was seeping into me subliminally, of what it really means to be a performer and a true singer songwriter. Um, there's so many songs that I listen to now just as I'm working out or just walking around. They'll hit you differently every time. It doesn't matter if you've heard him 50 times. And that happens to me a lot with Billy Joel. I'll put on my Billy Joel Spotify list, and it'll just play through so many different versions of Billy Joel songs, including maybe him at Madison Square Garden, or maybe his original version of She's Got Away, a song I've covered before as well. And I look up to these guys. They really have a very profound interpretation of their own music and also other people's music as well. So I would say those 4 or 5, that handful. Another guy's Martin Sexton, tremendous singer-songwriter. Jeff Buckley, of course. These men have set the bar very high, and I would be remiss if I did not say Luciano Pavarotti, simply for his interpretation of so many different classic pieces of music, from everything from Nessun Dorma to Pagliacci to, there's just he was just an impeccable voice. And as I listen to even Andrea Bocelli now, he also has that gift. So a number of different people have influenced how I perform.
Okay. What was the inspiration behind the lyrics for More Than I Can Give, your debut single?
Good question. I was in Los Angeles at the time. I was speaking almost on a daily basis with a cousin of mine and listening to his relationship with his then girlfriend, who's now his ex-girlfriend. And in those conversations that you have with friends or with family about relationships, it gets pretty deep, and in listening to him talk about her, he would say things of the nature of, I'm giving everything that I can to her. I'm pouring it all out, but she's wanting more than I'm able to give. Not that I'm willing to give, but that I'm giving now. And that's not enough for her. And that's when you realize you have a mismatch. You have, I believe relationships come down to chemistry, communication, and compatibility. And if you don't have that compatibility, there's a problem. And I think that was the crux of the song. She wants more than I can give in spite of everything. And I know I'm not to blame. I know I'm not to blame because I'm giving it, but I know that what she wants from me is more than I can give. And then I think a line directly that came from him at the time was, I guess love isn't enough. It's not, love is not enough. Love is not our problem, but I guess love is not enough to save us from our fate. He knew it was going to come to an end. And so therefore he realized love isn't the problem. Tenderness isn't a problem, but she's perceiving me is giving less than what I'm actually giving. And that mismatch became the crux of their relationship. And I think a lot of people can identify with that. So that was the inspiration for the song and that's what they say to write what you know. I wrote what I knew.
Okay. I think there's plenty of lessons for me, and there's plenty of lessons for me in the dating aspect there. But
yeah.
What's next for you? What's next?
Well, once again, just like we discussed earlier, you go into a new year with a hopeful attitude. For me, and what I experienced in 2020 with the loss of my father in a car accident that I was in and that I survived, that no one else survived, miraculously came out of it. I saw, I didn't want to come to Memphis, Tennessee. I didn't want to be here. I don't really care for the town. I grew up here. It will always be part of my heritage. I'll never deny that. But it's a rough place, kind of. It's not a happy place. It's a kind of a depressing place. But I look back and I say, all that time through the pandemic that I didn't want to be here, I got that time with my dad. And it was designed. And not only designed, it was profoundly, divinely inspired, I believe, to be with him. We did not always have the happiest of relationships, especially 4 or 5 years ago. The reconciliation and the restoration that I saw that happened over the past several years, especially the past 9 months or so in coming here, spending that time with him, watching old movies of us as a kid and how he was as a father. I will live with that for the rest of my life, those memories. So if you don't find grace and blessings even in tragedy, you're not looking hard enough. You're closing yourself off. You're not removing the veil. So as I approach 2021 and what's next for me, there's a purpose. I'm here on this earth. God has given me not just one, but perhaps 2 escapes at death. I was considered to be a SIDS baby, a sudden infant death syndrome baby, because I stopped breathing multiple times. I was sent home. I would turn blue. SIDS was very big in the early 80s. I don't know if you remember that, but it's not common anymore. But kids were dying from sudden infant death syndrome. They were turning blue. And that's what happened to me, but I made it. So I've actually escaped death several times. Finding meaning and in purpose and in life is critical. And so as I read this Jordan Peterson book, and actually, if you'll humor me, I'd like to read one part of it, because I think it's going to put what your question is in context in terms of what I hope to do in 2021. So he says in here, I hope that people, I hope that people understand what they already know, which is that the soul of the individual eternally hungers for the heroism of genuine being, and that the willingness to take on that responsibility is identical to the decision to live a meaningful life. Now, why that's important is several reasons: responsibility and decision. It means that we all have a responsibility to live life and to look out for our fellow humans, but we also have to make a decision to live a meaningful life. Meaning just doesn't happen organically. Some things do happen in our life that are inexplicable, but you have to take the decision to make a decision to aim high. So 2021 for me is about aiming high. It's not about aiming down and feeling sorry for myself and thinking, oh, woe is me, this is terrible, what's happened to me. No, I'm aiming higher. I'd like to see my music proliferate. If I could say it, proliferate. I'd like to see more opportunities in the TV and film world to envelop new roles. I'd like to see perhaps my story reach people who've lost hope, who are dealing with death. It's interesting. Just yesterday, Derrin and I went to the funeral of the father of a girl I used to sing with growing up in Memphis. It's very interesting that she lost her father to COVID, actually, no more than about 3 months after I lost mine. We grew up singing together. And my first voice teacher in Memphis, Tennessee, just died right before New Year's. I lost a very good friend, not to COVID, but in August prior to this accident happening to me. And these were profound people, for me. These were influential people for me. So, but we have to take the responsibility of life and what that means, and aiming high. We've got to aim high. We have to get our houses in order before we can get anyone else's houses in order. Do what you can do for yourself before you start meddling in other people's worlds. I'd like to see, there may be a possibility for me to host my own show this year. I would love that. I would love to be able to talk about the things we're talking about now on a daily basis, sharing personal stories, sharing a variety of different things that are affecting us right now, because we are living in tumultuous, chaotic times. We're trying to find order in a chaotic world. And that's another thing Peterson talks about, is establishing order in a chaotic time and with chaos that happens in our lives. We're product of that fallen world, going back to Adam and Eve. And so, God created order from chaos. We've got to be mindful of that and to continue creating order from chaos. The chaos is not going to stop. That's wishful thinking to think that it won't. That's willful blindness if you don't think that chaos is going to continue. It's going to get worse. Okay? So now that you know that, what can you do individually to aim higher and to create order? What do you have to do? You have to take responsibility for being. Responsibility as an individual. Create good daily. This is what I mean by doing the daily things that other people are unwilling to do. Quit pointing the finger at someone else and saying they're the problem. Make yourself the problem and fix it. Those are the things that I see as being important to what we can do individually. So yes, there are other successful milestones I'd like to achieve. So they're ambitious, but that's why I say aim high. So I'd love to work more with the U.S. Army Band. I'd love to work more with military bands. I think that'd be very fulfilling. I'd like to create a slew of new music, a new album, maybe a Christmas album, perhaps, by the time this time rolls around next year. Those are the things that I'd like to establish. Aim high, set the bar high, not unreasonably, but do things on a daily basis that will get you there. That's what I want to do.
Love it. Aim high. So What message would you like to resonate with our audience today? What would you like to leave our audience with?
Find the grace and blessings in daily life. You're going to go through hard times. I'm experiencing them. We're all experiencing them. I don't know anyone that had just a bang of a year in 2020. So find the grace, find the blessings, find the areas to improve. Don't go to bed angry at someone. Get your life and your affairs in order. One thing my dad did as soon as I came to Memphis in May, we worked on his living will. You're doing this thinking, this is down the road. This is for something, when you're 95, 100 years old. Little did I know what was going to happen in September. Get your affairs in order. He made it so easy for me to process all of the financial things I needed to process. He did a very good job of that. I encourage you to do the same. Get a living will. Don't leave your relatives hung out to dry if something happens to you. It can happen in the blink of an eye. Get your affairs in order. Get your house in order. Get your relationships in order. Don't go to bed angry with someone. You never know when that will be the last time you'll see them. Too many people have experienced that this year, especially those with COVID that can't even see their relatives or their loved ones dying because you can't go in the hospital, nursing homes, things of that sort. So that's my advice, if I could give any. And guess what? When I give the advice, I'm giving it to myself too, because I'm responsible for that. So a lot of people are willing to give advice but won't take it. Whatever's coming out of my mouth right now, I'm trying to heed myself. Is those are the things I need to do. And then when you put your head on the pillow at night, know that you've been at least successful. Know you've accomplished something today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't go to bed thinking it was a waste, because your life is not in vain. You know, it's not in vain. If you believe there is life after this and there is a savior that does protect you and is waiting for you, you're wasting your time if you're not doing anything.
Yes, sir. I think that's very, very true. And I love the message that you just given us all. Mr. Davidson, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Please come back.
My pleasure, Derrin. Thank you for having me, for your thoughts, for your grace in that you've showed me today, your respectful questioning. It's all important. And thank you for asking the tough questions and the ones that mean a lot. You're contributing to the solution, and I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.